Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the gentleman yielding. A ploy? It's not a ploy when the Department of Justice treats parents as terrorists, moms and dads who are simply showing up at a school board meeting to advocate for their son or daughter. A ploy. It's not a ploy when the FBI pays Twitter $3 million, not one, not two, $3 million to censor American citizens. It's not a ploy when the Department of Homeland Security tries to set up a disinformation governance board, because we all know that the Department of Homeland Security can tell what's good speech and what is bad speech, what's I mean, you got to be kidding me. I tell you what, dozens of whistleblowers have come talk to Republican staff on the Judiciary Committee don't think this is a ploy. That's why they came to talk to us. They know how serious this is. The former Democrat chair of the Judiciary Committee is in the press today saying we're going to fight this tooth and nail. This is political. But meanwhile, the former Democrat chair of the Intelligence Committee pressured Twitter to censor a journalist. You've got to be kidding me. This is the most important. This is about the First Amendment, something you guys used to care about. And I'd actually hoped we could get bipartisan agreement on protecting the First Amendment, the 5 rights we enjoy as Americans under the First Amendment. Your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble, right to petition the government, freedom of press, freedom of speech. Every single one's been attacked in the last 2 years. Government was telling people they couldn't go to church just a few years ago. Your right to assemble, your right to petition the government. The Democrats kept the Capitol closed. You couldn't, as a citizen, couldn't come to your Capitol that you pay for to address your member of Congress, to redress your grievances, because Nancy Pelosi wouldn't let you in. Freedom of the press, I just told you what the head of the Intel Committee tried to do to a journalist. The most important right we have, though, is your right to talk. Because if you can't talk, you can't practice your faith. You can't share your faith. You can't petition your government. The right to speak is the most important, and that's what they're going after. And that's why we've had dozens of whistleblowers come talk to us. We want to focus on that because we want it all to stop. We want the double standard to stop. This idea that if you're a pro-life activist, you're going to get your door kicked in, you're going to get arrested and handcuffed in front of your 7 kids and your spouse for simply praying in front of an abortion clinic and telling the guy who was harassing your son to knock it off. You're going to have the FBI raid your home. But the protest that went on at Supreme Court justices' homes in the aftermath of the leak of the Dobbs opinion, oh, no problem there. Americans are sick and tired of it. And what we want, we don't want to go after anyone. We just want it to stop. And we want to respect the First Amendment to the Constitution that the greatest country in the world has. That's what this committee is all about, and that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to do. And I yield back to the gentleman. Appreciate him.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record an article from The Hill entitled "January 6 Panel Names 6 House GOP Lawmakers Who Asked for Pardons." Mr. Speaker, there were at least 6 House members who sought pardons for President Trump following January 6th insurrection, and many of them would like to be on this committee, we're told.
Without objection.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 2
minutes. I thank the gentleman.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this resolution, which appears designed to launch a dangerous and unprecedented attack on our law enforcement agencies. Last week, Americans across the country watched the Republican Party melt down the moment it encountered its first test. For days, the extremist wing of the party held the rest of their caucus hostage as they demanded a steep price for their support. And today, we have the first of their many demands on display, an open-ended investigation into whatever conspiracy theories may be headlining the right-wing echo chamber at the moment, with unchecked authority to undermine ongoing criminal and intelligence investigations. For example, the Select Committee can use its expansive authorities to protect Donald Trump, those who perpetrated fake elector schemes to overturn the 2020 presidential election, insurrectionists facing trials for their crimes, and other domestic terrorists. It aims to undermine the safeguards of our democracy and to embolden MAGA extremists who would rather see our institutions fail than to see Democrats and President Biden succeed. Make no mistake, the Destroy Democracy Subcommittee will enable the House Republicans to interfere with the free operation of businesses they do not like, to inhibit the fight against domestic terrorism, and to settle political scores on behalf of Donald Trump. The Judiciary Committee has serious work to do, but rather than trying to solve the problems of the American people, this new subcommittee will expend untold time and money undermining our nation's law enforcement agencies, our justice system, and our intelligence community. all for a political stunt catering to the extremist wing of the Republican Party. I oppose this resolution, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the incoming chairman of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the creation of the Select Subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. The federal government exists to serve the American people, administer the law impartially, and protect our cherished freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. However, some unelected, unaccountable federal bureaucrats have abused their positions of power. The other side of the aisle likes to talk about, quote, threats of democracy. But they refuse to do any congressional oversight as the federal government weaponized its authority, influence, and power to target American groups and citizens based on their political and ideological views. Just yesterday, we learned that classified documents from Joe Biden's time as vice president were stashed in an unsecure closet. The National Archives knew about these documents several months ago, before the election. But the American people were just informed yesterday thanks to some investigative reporting. Meanwhile, the FBI conducted a raid on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence for the same violation. Why has President Biden, who has repeatedly kept classified materials in an unsecure location for years, never faced a raid? Is it because we have a two-tier system of justice? The left also continues to push for an expanded IRS, even though the agency has a history of targeting conservative political groups. They push for more audits of middle-class Americans instead of better customer service. In another example, at President Biden's direction, the Department of Homeland Security formed a dystopian disinformation board tasked with policing American speech online. While this board has been disbanded, we continue to learn more almost every day about how the Biden administration pressures big tech to censor and suppress Americans' views online that are contrary to their political narrative. The Biden administration's Justice Department also actively targeted parents concerned about woke curricula in their children's schools and labeled many as domestic terrorists. The American people have made it clear that they want accountability for these abuses. We can
In an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman is
thank the gentleman from Oklahoma. We cannot delay accountability any longer. We need to get to work now. We must expose the abuses committed by the unelected, unaccountable federal bureaucracy and enact solutions to prevent similar abuses from happening in the future. I look forward as chairman of the House Oversight Committee to work closely with this new select committee, and I yield back.
the gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to insert into the record a CNN article entitled, "There are clear distinctions between Trump and Biden's two cases." Mr. Speaker, the difference is clear. Unlike in Trump's case, Biden doesn't appear to have tried to assert ownership of the files, to obstruct their handover, or make unhinged claims that he had previously declassified them through his thinking. Trump is being investigated to see whether he infringed the Espionage Act by keeping classified material and for the possible obstruction of justice. I would just say to my colleague who spoke before, the American people also have expectations of elected officials, such as respecting the Constitution and respecting free and fair elections, and not trying to overturn free and fair elections. And unfortunately, a majority of my friends on the other side of the aisle chose to ignore that. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to make something crystal clear. The primary purpose of this special subcommittee is to interfere with the special counsel's ongoing investigation into a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. This is a shocking abuse of power. But it's not just the usual efforts by members on the other side of the aisle to once again do Donald Trump's dirty work. This time, they're trying to protect themselves. One of them, a member from Pennsylvania, had his cell phone seized pursuant to a court order finding probable cause that he committed a crime. Yet he has indicated that he wants to be on this subcommittee so that he can undermine a criminal investigation into himself. My Republican counterparts can dress up the subcommittee with a menacing name, but let's call it what it really is: the Republican Committee to Obstruct Justice. The American people don't want that. They don't want yet another front of the Republican war on democracy and the rule of law. I will vote no and urge everyone to do so. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished incoming Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Mr. Turner of Ohio.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Cole. Last Congress, I served as the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee. Chairman Jordan and I have already been working to ensure that the intelligence community and the Department of Justice, including the FBI, are not violating the civil rights of law-abiding Americans. Sadly, we already have very troubling evidence to begin our investigation to ensure that our intelligence community and law enforcement agencies are not violating Americans' constitutional rights. Some of this information is similar to what's been publicly disclosed by the Twitter files, which is a small portion of the information that we have gravely concerning about improper use of government authority that this committee will be focusing on. This subcommittee is about protecting rights, a task that everyone in this body just took an oath to protect last week. Our committee will be assisting this subcommittee. We look forward to be working with Chairman Jordan on this important issue, and we know
qua nửa đời phiêu dạt, con lại về úp mặt vào sông quê. Ơi con sông dạt dao như lòng mẹ, chở che con đi qua chớp bể mưa nguồn. Từng hạt phù sa tháng 3 tháng 7, từng vì heo may trên má em hồng. Vợi tuổi thơ mùa sú bánh đa vừng. Ơi con sông quê, con sông quê. Ơi con sông quê, con sông quê. Con cá dưới sông cây trồng trên bãi, lúa gặt rồi còn để lại giống thơm. Cùng một bên sông, châu đầm sông dưới, bầy trẻ thơ tắm mát phía thượng nguồn. Một dòng xanh trong chảy mãi tới vô cùng. Qua nửa đời phiêu dạt, con lại về úp mặt vào sông quê. Ơi con sông dạt dao như lòng mẹ, chở che con đi qua chớp bể mưa nguồn. Từng hạt phù sa tháng 3 tháng 7, từng vì heo may trên má em hồng. Vợi tuổi thơ mùa sú bánh đa vừng. Ơi con sông quê, con sông quê. Ơi con sông quê, con sông quê. Con cá dưới sông cây trồng trên bãi, lúa gặt rồi còn để lại giống thơm. Cùng một bên dòng xanh trong chảy mãi tới vô cùng, một dòng xanh trong chảy mãi tới